Okay, okay. Okay, shall I start?
Yes. Yes, sir. Please carry on, sir. Now the floor is yours. Yeah.
Good evening, all. Today, I want to briefly discuss about the ICU management of COVID case in mid-level setup because I am working in a mid-level setup. My hospital is not a state COVID hospital also. There is a mid-level setup is with the minimum requirement of equipments. Other drugs are available with us. We have ventilators and we have any non-NIV equipments also. So in such setups are more common because we cannot find the high level setups in everywhere. That's why I want to discuss here what are the from the starting of the ICU establishment to the patient discharge. What are the important things to be keep in mind while managing ICU management for a very intensivist or any COVID medical officer or any physician or any other administrators. So today our goals are how to setting up ICU in mid-level setup, what are the admission approaches, and what are the your laboratory investigations you have to repeated do for every patient, and mainly important what is the treatment part, and what is your post-discharge approach. It's very important because now we are the government is taking some steps that after 10 days we are discharging the patient. There is no need of staying in COVID care centers or quarantine centers. And surprisingly, we are receiving the patients after discharge of 4 or 5 days with severe breathlessness and hypoxia. These things should be keep in mind because I will discuss in the previous next slides how it is important. So regarding setting of ICU, so usually the highly recommended is negative pressure suction rooms. So negative pressure suction rooms, by keeping the large number of patients is very difficult. If there are negative pressure suction rooms are available, then it is very easy because the negative pressure suction rooms, the airflow with 12 times per minute, the every 5 seconds airflow will 5 minutes airflow will occur. It's very ideal thing to keep any infectious patient in negative pressure section. If the rooms are not available, you have to prepare the room like a well ventilated by arranging the blowers. So the same, the blowers also we arrange here in operation theater. Every 5 minutes, the blowers they will sucking the air in the room and they will push out the air. And if the windows are there, you have to keep the windows open because well ventilation is more important because they are all high infectious patients. Their virus shedding is important. So the air should be go out and fresh air should become to prevent the infection control in the healthcare personnel or and some other person also. And the block should be separated. The where we are keeping the patient, the separated block they should be separated the buffer zones. So why? Because the buffer zones are the secured zones. So from the patient scenario to the administrative scenario where the staff nurses are sitting or some sitting, there should be separated some buffer zones. It's very important. Some ICU setups, central control of monitors will be there. So from the buffer zones, they will monitor all the patients. Some CC cameras they will be there sometimes. Some all the monitors should be monitored by sitting in the buffer zones also. And staff setup is very important. Adequate staff setup is very important for any ICU. From the class 4 workers, so from MNO to the FNO to the staff nurses, and from the COVID medical officers and the chief medical officer. Like the staff setup should be there and they should be well trained. Well trained by the means of by how to wear the PPU and how to administer drugs and how to take care of the oxygen hoods too and how to take care of ventilator management. Everything should be the well trained, the staff should be there because it's a highly infective area. If they are not trained, it's very difficult to avoid the infection to the others. And next thing is infection control is very important. Infection control, especially in highly infectious areas. So after wearing the PPE, especially when the glove and PP areas and some wearing the mask areas, some unprotected areas will be there. We have to protect. And in infection control, and every ICU should be autoclaved regularly every 3 or 4 days, and through the infection control, so wasting of the all the infected material to some other protective areas, and especially for rooms for donning and doping is very important, because in our like mid-level setups it's very difficult to maintain the donning and doping, because all the PPEs are infected things, they are touching the patients, the PPEs are touching flooded with sometimes blood, sometimes secretions, they may be infective. If you are not caring if you're sparing the rooms for donning and doping, so infection will spread easily to the healthcare providers. What the things are going on now, especially in government setups. That's why the special rooms should be, we have to provide for donning and doping areas. And special equipments like dialysis, ECMO should be available within the complex. And especially chest X-ray and ultrasound and ECG and echo things, they should probably bedside if they are possible. Because we should not ship the patient from the ICU to for chest X-ray, for ultrasound, for simple for ECG. So mobile unit should be available, and the CT complex should be in accessible area. So patient should we can shift to the if it is very nearer, it is very easy to avoid the infection, because we are worrying about the more of the infection. So admission approach, regarding admission approach, different protocol will be followed by the different ICUs. Some ICUs they will follow the date of positive declare. So early, some for example, long positive declare case in one area, and early positive declare case one area, because the patient usually will be negative by the 14th or 15th day. If you are keeping this patient in some early positive declare areas, the reinfection chance of reinfection will be more. So if you separation of the patients according to the positive area declared, so that we can avoid the reinfection of the patients and reinfection of other bacterial infections. And some ICUs, they will be admitted by the severity of the patient. Severity of the patient, if the more severity of the patient, more care he needs. Some high dependent areas it will be there, and low dependency areas like that. And some ICUs, they will requirement of oxygen therapy. They divide the ICUs. So some blocks like that, simply oxygen mask. Some blocks HFNO. Some blocks will be NIV. Some blocks will be mechanical ventilation. Like that, the patient should be admitted. And some ICUs, the patient-related comorbidities. And the ICCM, they gave the guidelines who the patients are admitted in ICU. So those patients are who need for mechanical ventilation, those patients who need for vasopressors, those need respirator more than 35 per minute, and PaVT is less than 55 and root mere, SpO2 less than 90%, and supplemental oxygen 6 liters per minute. And some patients who are on confusion also, they ICCM advised for ICU admission, and leukopenia and thrombocytopenia and uremia and multilobar infiltrate, that means Porad score more than 15, and some patients hypertension, hyperthermia, especially the patients are septic shock. These are all the criteria for ICU admission according to the ICCM guidelines. So next thing is lab approach. So when the patient is admitted into the ICU, so usually the patient should be monitored. So whatever the support what we are giving to the patient, the support will be working or not. We have to check repeatedly by taking the lab approach. So immediately after admission of the patient, we have to send especially some simple investigation like complete blood picture. So usually we will see the alteration of blood cells, like leukopenia is very important thing. We have to consider that the grave prognosis, and increasing the total count, also adding some bacterial infection to the viral infections, and neutrophil eosinophil ratio, that will also decides the patient prognosis. That's why complete blood picture is a must for all the patients who are admitted in the ICU, and some other special investigation like D-dimers and serum ferritin and LDH and CRP. So these are all the most other 4 important things along with the requirements. And if possible, chest X-ray. Chest X-ray should must while before admission of the patient. And if CT is available, CT, because Porad score we are dividing the patient into the mild and moderate, severe. Less than 8/25 is a mild, and 8 to 15 is a moderate. More than 15 is a severe patient. so that we can assess the severity of the patient, so that we can triage the patient to admit the patient in required area. Under these the lab tests should be repeated at least once in 3 days. This is very important thing. So according to the CRP, according to the D-dimers, we will adjust the steroid doses or anticoagulants, and we can assess the recovery of the patient also by doing the investigation every 3 days. And whenever the emergency investigations required, you have to do immediately. So this important slide everybody should concentrate. Why? Because so usually the incubation period is the 5 to 6 days, average is 5.1 days. So after 5 days only the patient will be getting positive. So the acute mild illness, it will travel the 5 to 10 days. That will come some fever, cough, and diarrhea, and myalgia and sore throat, like that. Different symptoms that a patient will present this 5 to 10 days. What we are doing now, so after the 10 days, we are discharging the patient without doing the COVID test also. So that is very dangerous. And post discharge, after 10 days, the discharge of the patient is very necessary, because they are the patient, those need the ICU requirement. So usually the seroconversion will occur 6 to 10 days after symptom onset. That is, after 10 days, the symptoms will rise. So macrophage activation syndrome are increasing inflammatory pro-inflammatory to the inflammatory stage. So usually that occurs 12 to 14 days. After 14 days, it will stay up to the 24 days. This is the period where the patients, they need the ICU admission. So that's why the post discharge of the patient from the 12 to 28 days is very important. The patient should be monitored for the signs of any dyspnea, any breathlessness, any hypoxemia, any tachypnea. We have to monitor the patient. If they presented immediately, we have to admit the patient to the ICU. Then only we have to save the patient. Otherwise, morbidity and mortality will be increased, especially in the COVID cases. So this is another slide. It signifies where the treatment, what is the importance of treatment. So antivirals, usually we will admit the antivirals after 8 or 10 days, because patient will positive the 5th or 6th day. So mild symptom will occur. Now nobody is prescribing the antivirals. So just we are giving the hydroxychloroquine or azithromycin or something, we are discharging patient. But this period, the 8 to 12 days or 6 to 12 days is very important. As early as possible, if the patient is positive, you have to use the antivirals. Now the US also they made a one rule that when the patient is admitted in the ICU or any hospital, immediately he has to give the remdesivir, like that. Because if you use the antivirals earlier, the viral load will be decreases, the macrophage activation syndrome will be decreases, the inflammatory phase will be decreases. So as early as possible, you have to start the antivirals. And convalescent plasma also, it starts around 10 to 11 days. And immunomodulators, that will come after 12 days, and adjuvants from the starting to the early stages. So coming to the treatment part, here we have 3 things. One is drugs, second is oxygen therapy, third is other treatments like dialysis, other treatments. So coming to the drugs in ICU, so antivirals, anticoagulants, immunomodulators, other supportive therapies. So now all the ICU patients, they should receive the remdesivir injection. That is a 200 milligrams a day one, followed by 100 milligrams per day for at least 4 days. That is a 5 days course. So a lot of studies they shown that remdesivir giving a 5 days or 10 days, there is no changes. So that's why as early as possible, patient admit to the ICU. Patient is hypoxic, you have to start the remdesivir if is not used, or at least if remdesivir is not available, you have to start the favipiravir. So favipiravir, that is the first day, that is 9 tablets, the 200 milligrams, that is 1800 milligrams BD, followed by the 800 milligrams BD for 14 days. You have to use the remdesivir and favipiravir. These drugs now we are using here. They are showing good results also. By using these antivirals early, we are decreasing the viral load, and we are avoiding the complications in the COVID patients. So if the remdesivir or favipiravir is not available, for ICMR guidance, they are giving the hydroxychloroquine or azithromycin combination. Hydroxychloroquine 400 milligrams per day one, followed by the 200 milligrams OD for 10 days, followed by azithromycin 5 milligrams for 10 days. The ICMR they are giving. And lopinavir and rotenavir, I don't have any experience but lot of studies are there. They will use. And now recently, one regimen it will comes ivermectin with doxycycline. So ivermectin 12 milligrams OD for 10 days, doxycycline 100 milligrams BD for 10 days. If the patient ICU also. So these are all things, and some other treatments also available. The colchicine and N-acetylcysteine and famotidine and dexamethasone combination along with the remdesivir. Also, some people are using, because only two drugs are now the approval. One is the remdesivir, second is the dexamethasone. All other drugs they are not approval to treat for the COVID patient. But still, lot of things are going on. Some people they are using methemoglobin. Some people they are using now convalescent plasma in ICU, but the studies they are not supporting these convalescent plasma in ICUs also, because a lot of things are there while using the convalescent plasma. And methyl hemoglobin also. Some people now they are using to decrease the viral load methyl hemoglobin early, the intravenous and oral drugs. They will also act as a antiviral by changing the area pH of the area to decrease the viral load. So a lot of the things are all there regarding antivirals group. Now they are using, but approval is for remdesivir is the only drug now approved, and favipiravir also they are using orally. So we're going to come to the anticoagulants. The International Society of Thrombosis and Hemostasis recently recommended that all hospitalized COVID-19 patients, even those they are not in ICU, also should get the prophylaxis of low molecular heparin, unless they have any specific contraindications like active bleeding and platelet. So if they are not ICU also, they have to use the prophylaxis of low molecular heparin. So in ICU, we have to must use the low molecular heparin, because the COVID, the virus that will act on the epithelial cells on the vascular endothelium, it will damage us, it will causing the disseminate intravascular coagulation and venous thromboembolism. Later the complication, they are the more things that pushing the patient into the hypoxia by damaging the lung. So some guidelines, more than 8 years anticoagulants. So severe COVID-19 is associated with the feature of DIC and hypercoagulation, which can manifest as a venous thromboembolism and microthrombosis. CDC also estimates approximately 90% of the hospital COVID-19 patients, especially ICUs, they have the underlying diseases, the obesity, hypertension, and chronic lung disease, diabetes, heart disease, which may increase the risk of thrombosis along with the COVID action. And critical ill patients COVID-19 have been reported to have a venous thromboembolic incidence rate around 30%, which is significantly higher than the non-COVID in patients. So a lot of studies are there. One study and 9 patients, they studied the COVID-19 patient DVT prophylaxis, the decrease the 28-day mortality rate by 20% in patients with D-dimers more than 300, and sepsis induced score like more than 4 without increasing the rates of major bleeding. And elevated D-dimer is associated with worse outcomes. Recent studies have found that D-dimers of certain threshold have a high positive predictive value of venous thromboembolism. Even suggests these threshold may be useful in determining when the ultrasound screen given empiric full dose of anticoagulation needed. So hospitalized patient with a diagnosed necessitating therapeutic anticoagulation should be treated with a treatment dose of unfractionated low molecular heparin instead of direct oral anticoagulants or orphan, which are less desirable due to the illness-related hepatic dysfunction and reduced appetite or poor intake. So these are all the anticoagulant, how to give the anticoagulants in like prophylaxis or therapeutic anticoagulation. Prophylaxis in critical ill patients and prophylactic in non-critical ill patients for DVT prophylaxis. So all the things, enoxaparin with a per kg body weight. If the less than 50 kg, it will be 5,000 units subcutaneous. If more than 50 kg, it goes around 7,500 units. And if it is a therapeutic anticoagulation, the high dose of prophylaxis, that is once D-dimer is around 2000 units per hour also they are recommending. And one thing, extended thromboprophylaxis up to 45 days of post-discharge is very important, where now they are prescribing. Previously, they are prescribing the 45 days post-discharge. Now, they are prescribing for 3 months. Especially any anticoagulant, at least aspirin is 75 milligrams OD is sufficient for at least 3 months. Now, they are prescribing. So, other immunomodulators, IL-1 inhibitors, anakinra, I don't have experience, and IL-6 antibodies, tocilizumab. In severe patients, tocilizumab may be used, but there are a lot of complications are there with tocilizumab. We should be very careful by using tocilizumab. And non-specific immunomodulators, the dexamethasone is a proven drug, especially 6 milligrams OD they are giving for 10 days. If the dexamethasone is also not available, the oral prednisolone or oral methylprednisolone or hydrocodone also effective. Other immunoglobulin statins and angiotensin pathway modulators and macrolides also act as a immunomodulators. So other supportive drugs like N-acetyl cysteine and famotidine, vitamin C and D, and recently also some case studies also coming. The high dose of vitamin C around 10 to 12 grams of vitamin C, it helps to the patient whenever the patients are in mechanical ventilation, when all the therapies are failure. And 2 to 3 cases also recently observed at least 12 to 13 milligrams of vitamin C. It helps the patient to recover the patient very fastly. And zinc also is an immunomodulator, and calcium is immunomodulator, and probiotic, especially the patients where they are presenting with the diarrhea. So probiotics are very important. We have to give the probiotic along with the hydration support. And when the patients are asthmatic, or we have to use a bronchodilator, especially in inhaler type. We should not use the nebulizer in ICU. And adequate hydration is important if the patient is disorder vaporization. So regarding come to the oxygen therapy, prone position is very important for giving the better oxygenation. If you use the oxygen mask, if you use the HFNY, if you use the NIV, the position of the patient may be prone position. If this patient is conscious, you have to use the prone position at least 12 to 18 hours. Now they are recommending prone position. It increases oxygenation, especially attenuated posterior part of the lungs. It will increase oxygenation. Lot of studies are there regarding the position of the patient with the prone and supine position. Prone position will increase the oxygenation and ventilation person mismatch, and it corrects. First, we have to try it. Any patient shifted to the ICU. So prone position oxygen mask 6 liters. We have to trial. After that, we have to increase the trial up to the 10 liters. If he is not responsive, then we will go to high frequency nasal oxygen up to the 20-30 liters, up to 60 liters. So we can go. If the patient is failure, the HFNP or NIV, but they both are equal. If the HFNP are not available, we will go for NIV, the BiPAP and CPAP model. If these three are failure, then only we have to go for prone ventilation, because in prone ventilation, with mechanical prone with mechanical ventilation, he needs a intubation. Intubation means a lot of aerosol generating is there, so a lot of infection will be there. We have to take care of lot of things. So patient should be while intubating, we have to rapid sequence intubation. We have to do with 100%. We should not do the pre-oxygenation. Immediately we have to intubate, and we have to clamp the ventricular tube, not, and immediately we have to connect the ventilator, and you have to use the HME filters also through the ventilator. If all the 4 are failures, then the patient may need the ECMO. Now some patients are, especially some singer SP also is on ECMO. ECMO also gives, but results are less, but some help will be occur through the ECMO. So others, the main treatments to correct any metabolic abnormalities, and some patient diabetic, they will go into the diabetic ketoacidosis, or some patients they will go to the renal failure, because multi-organ failure is common, and especially long-term ICU patients. ICU patient, to correct them, we have to patient dialysis, and other treatments like septic shock is a very important thing. Now the septic shock in the long-standing patients, so septicemia is one of the important. We have to maintain the mean artery pressure at least 60 to 65, and serum lactate less than 2 levels. And we have to treat the septic shock very judiciously. We have to give the the volume challenge at least 20 to 25 to 35 ml for iso normal okay, the crystallites like normal saline lingual lactates we have to use, and we have to take care of the prevention of other complications like by doing the reduce of invasive mechanism as early as possible patient recovers. We have to weaning the patient and reducing incidence of ventilator associated pneumonias, reduce the incidence of venous thromboembolism by using anticoagulant, reduce the incidence of catheter related bloodstream infection by using special septic precautions, and reduce the incidence of pressure sources. Pressure, they are the source of infection. So pressure hearing areas when especially when patients are prone, we have to cover the facial areas. And high pressure areas there should be protected, and reduce instead of stress ulcers the GAD bit, especially we have to use the proton pump inhibitors or HTS antagonists to avoid the stress ulcers and ICU related weakness. There are always some prevention of the complication. These are all things we have to take care of. So this is the entire scenario algorithm. These type of things should be laminated and posted, especially in ICU areas, because all the COVID doctors they should know what are the things they have to do, especially in the ICU things. So everybody should be familiarized, and everybody should be know what have to do the mild cases, what have to do the severe cases, how to apply the NIV, how to apply the HFNO, so like that. These the things we have to. Next comes to the post-COVID management. This is very important. This is $100 million person. Patient is recovered from the ICU after after achieving the discharge criteria, that is with normal conditions with no any vasopressors. Improves, everything is improves and in normal. He's obeying all commands, and then we have to extubate the patient. After extubation, the patient also after achieving the weaning criteria, we will discharge the patient. After discharging the patient, why? Because now we are getting uh, more complications like pulmonary fibrosis, or especially in last week, I think some of our senior, we lost a senior. He discharged from the ICU. He went nicely into the home, and he spent for 5 days. After 5 days, he developed a pneumothorax and bronchopleural fistula. So that type of patients, because ventilator strategies also. So there we are using ventilator strategies, the low tidal volumes and the low plateau pressure. There's a less than 30 centimeters of incident plateau pressure we have to use. So we should not use tidal volumes more, because the lungs are very fragile. The more chance of pneumothorax. They should not identified at the time of discharge. They slowly progressive when the patient is discharged. You have to give the patients clear-cut identifications, so that any hypoxia, any other things, any breathlessness, any other, because it will affect all other organs, including heart. It will affect some. Now the patients, post-COVID patients, now the so a lot of patients are complaining giddiness, and recently some of patients we are observing, they are not previously, they are not non-diabetics, now they are getting diabetic, developing diabetic state. That means pancreas also affects. So this virus will affect all the organs. So thorough surveillance at least 3 months is needed whenever we will discharge the patients uh, after post-COVID management. So this is the thing. So especially we should very careful after 14th day of discharge of the patient. 14th day to 24 days. Any signs of hypoxemia, any signs of breathlessness, any signs of tachypnea, any signs of tachycardia, any signs of weakness, any signs or symptoms they will find, they have to admit immediately, because if you give the treatment earlier, the thing, the prognosis will be more. If the patients are they are not aware of the things, they will come to the ICU very late. So almost all lung may be damaged 60 to 70%. The Corrad score may be the 18 or 20 when the patient, the prognosis may be very less. In that patient, the mortality is very high, what we are facing. So that's why I'm requesting all the Oh, doctors, please, if you take care of, now we are take care of the patients up to the 10 to 14 days only, or in government setup also. So after 10 days of admission, we are discharging. All the discharging patients, we have to educate, we have to give the pamphlets when to visit the hospital, because they are the patients, they are going to the morbidity and mortality, and they are the patients, they are requiring the admission more. That's why, please, you have to educate all the patients when they have to come to the ICU, and we have to give their phone numbers also, contact numbers also, when they have to where they have to contact. Now all the private hospitals also, they came into the scenario. They are also doing lot of work in the especially COVID management, especially in Chennai. MGM hospital is doing a nice job, and Apollo also doing nice job. So that they need a high dependency ICU areas. We cannot manage at the mid level, because 60% lung damage, 70% lung damage, very difficult to treat in mid level areas. They need high dependent areas. So if you take care prior, we can save the more lives. Otherwise, it's very difficult. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for your nice presentation and highly informative, sir. Sir, respected doctors, if you have any doubts, you can call to sir. Sir, we have one query in chat box
Please.
from Dr. Mohan Krishna Reddy, sir. Kindly clarify the role of.
Please.
If it is useful, time of therapy and dose and time of exposure.
Ozone therapy, na? Ozone therapy.
Yes, sir.
No, they are not using Mohan Krishna Reddy. Actually, I don't have an idea about the ozone therapy also. But nitric oxide, some people are using in ICU. Ozone therapy, I don't have exposure. Thank you. Some query also, high dose of methylprednisolone. I'm saying yes, sir. Especially in ICU patients, high dose of methylprednisolone, we have to see the along the hypoxic condition, we have to take methylprednisolone accordingly. 40 milligrams BD, followed by 40 milligrams TAD, up to studies are there, up to they are going 250 milligrams TAD also. Some studies going increasing the methylprednisolone, they will increase the prognosis also. And regarding methylene blue, also now the recent studies are coming. Methylene blue, IV methylene blue, they are giving 120 milligrams of BD. So it is usually it acts as an antiviral, sir. Earlier the patients if give the methylene blue administered antivirals, and some doctors they are trying for the nasal methylene blue for the especially the healthcare persons who are working in ICUs. So after coming to ICUs, they are washing their upper nasal cavity with methylene blue, and some prophylactic methylene blue also they are giving, and oral methylene blue tablets also they are available, but I am not having oral methylene blue tablet, but they are using methylene blue. And any queries? I think there are the 4 queries.
Hello.
Any queries and any comments, please?
Excellent talk, Dr. Srinivas Rao. I'm very happy.
Thank you.
I have suddenly seen this today itself, and I just logged into your link. You have done a wonderful job.
Sir, thank you very much, sir. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
సార్ థ్యాంక్ యూ సార్, మీరు ఇంత బిజీలో ఉండి ట్రైనింగ్ క్లాసులు
ఓ పక్కన కోవిడ్ కాదు కానీ కోవిడ్ వర్క్ చేస్తలేదు కానీ బట్ డూయింగ్ సంథింగ్ ఫర్ దిస్.
యాక్చువల్లీ సార్ చాలా
యువ అన్నాడు కదా,
చాలా బిజీగా ఉన్నారు సార్. నా కోసం మీరు ఈ యొక్క లెక్చర్ ఇచ్చినందుకు చాలా ధన్యవాదాలు సార్. ఎందుకంటే బ్యాక్ 8 years నుంచి సార్కు నాకు అసోసియేషన్ ఉంది, దానివల్ల నాకు సార్ ఇవ్వడం జరిగింది సార్. థ్యాంక్ యూ సార్. మీరు ఈ మంత్ లో నేనే మా కంపెనీలో ఫస్ట్ టైం సార్ మీ వల్ల నేను చేయగలిగాను. థ్యాంక్ యూ సో మచ్ సార్. థ్యాంక్ యూ వెరీ
థ్యాంక్
మచ్.
యూ అశోక్ సార్. సుబ్రహ్మణ్యం సార్, గుడ్ ఈవినింగ్.
Hi, good evening.
గురువు గారు ఏమైనా కామెంట్స్ ప్లీజ్?
Nice talk and good presentation. You have covered almost all the aspects of COVID-19. Very good.
థ్యాంక్ యూ సార్.
Welcome.
సార్, if there are no questions, shall we log out?
Yes, sir.
Thank
Yes,
you.
sir. Thank you once again, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Behalf of JB Chemicals is concerned, sir. Good night, sir. Good night to all.
థ్యాంక్ యూ.
Good night.
థ్యాంక్ యూ సార్. థ్యాంక్ యూ సో మచ్.